Why was David so confident that he would defeat Goliath? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Samuel on walking through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 28 to 37. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 28. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Samuel chapter 17, beginning at verse 28. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men. And Eliab's anger was aroused against David, and he said, "Why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle." And David said, "What have I done now? Is there not a cause?" Then he turned from him towards another and said the same thing, and these people answered him as the first ones did. Now when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to Saul, and he sent for him. Then David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go out and fight with this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he is a man of war from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it rose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing as he has defied the armies of the living God." Moreover, David said, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Israel is preparing to go to battle with the Philistines, but there is a problem. They are afraid due to the presence of Goliath, a man who stood about 9 feet tall, towering over all of them, not only in stature, but in strength and weaponry. With God's help, of course, Israel should have had faith to defeat Goliath, but remember, the Lord had rejected Saul as king by this point, and so Saul's faith was weak, if existent at all. This led to Saul being afraid, which led to Israel's army being afraid. David, though, has come from Bethlehem to the battlefield, sent by Jesse to gather a report on his brothers. David sees Goliath, hears what is going on from Israel's soldiers, and is indignant. Who was this uncircumcised Philistine who would come and defy the armies of the living God? This is the attitude that Saul, a man of war, should have had. But no, it was the attitude of the young shepherd boy, David, the boy who would become king. Now Eliab saw his brother and heard what his brother said, and like a lot of older brothers, chastised his younger brother for what he saw as David's pride and impetuousness. He couches his scorn in another accusation against David, which is that he must have been abandoning the sheep in order to come to the battlefield, something that could have cost the family a lot of money. This is an example of judging unrighteously, for had Eliab asked, he would have found out that Jesse had been the one who sent David to the battlefield, and the sheep had not been abandoned, but left with another keeper of sheep. In truth, Eliab didn't want David there. Whether that was out of concern for David being killed or out of pure sibling rivalry, we don't know. But David basically tells his brother off by asking, what had he done? For at the moment, he was just inquiring as to the situation. David, though, persisted, and lo and behold, all of the soldiers were telling him the same story about Goliath, and seemingly what Saul had promised for the one in Israel who defeated Goliath. With nobody in Israel having faith to step up, David decided that he would. Now word got back to Saul, and so when David came before Saul, Saul tried to dissuade him from going, noting how he wasn't a man of war, but a youth, and Goliath was a man of war from his youth. But Saul's lack of faith wasn't contagious, for David was a man of faith in God. He had been a shepherd all these years and had had his flocks attacked by lions and bears, animals that were fairly prevalent in Palestine at that time, especially in the unpopulated mountainous areas. And when a sheep was attacked, David had attacked the animal and was victorious. Doing this would not only require a ton of strength, but a ton of courage too. Would you be willing to attack a lion or a bear? Now, some hunters are, but they do so with guns or spears. Would even they be willing to attack an uninjured wild lion or bear with their bare hands? Probably not, or at least not many of them. Yet that was David's job. Protect his sheep, even if that meant his own injury, or at worst, his own death. Through all of this, though, David didn't attribute his victories to his own strength. He attributed them to God. God had delivered him from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear. If God did that, God would deliver David from the hand of the Philistine. Had God promised David this? Not that we can tell, but David was confident that God would because the Philistine had defied the armies of his people, the chosen people of God. That's how strong David's faith is in God, and that's how strong our faith needs to be in God too. No, God hasn't promised to deliver us through every physical danger we face, but he has promised to deliver the faithful from the devil and to eternal life. We can therefore face life's trials and tribulations without fear, knowing what lies ahead. That doesn't mean we act recklessly or don't take precautions when needed, for even David took 5 stones and a slingshot despite trusting in God for victory. It just means that we don't approach our trials the same way that the world does. We place our trust in God, that no matter what, God will be glorified, and God will ultimately deliver me, if not in this life, then in the life to come. Saul got the message and told David to go, and the Lord be with him. We'll continue with this, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 38 to 51, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.